In this Webflow tutorial, I'll teach you how to make a drop-down link a link. What do I mean by this? In this example website, presented.com.au, we see we have a navbar at the very top with different items such as services, work, about, etc. But you'll notice in services, this is a drop-down, which is indicated by this arrow icon right here. And you'll also notice, or you probably won't notice, which we'll talk about this in the future of the video, if I actually put my mouse over services, it turns orange, and I can actually click into this specific link right here, and this will take me to the actual service page. So this isn't done natively in Webflow through the component, but we will do this by adding a link block. Let's go. So right now in my Webflow project, I just have a dummy website with a default Webflow navbar. I've also made a tutorial in the past how to make a custom navbar, so feel free to check that out. But right here in this specific div block right here called nav inner, I have all my nav links right here. So about, projects, and gallery. I'm going to go ahead and add another one, but this time it's going to be a drop down. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command E, which is making me search this bar right here. If you don't want to do that, you can also hit this plus icon on the top left and find it yourself. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and type in drop down right here, and you'll notice it added a drop down. Let's go ahead and just break down the drop down component. So if I just expand it, we have the main drop down div, or the parent div. I've also made a tutorial in the past to really explain how layers work in Webflow, specifically parents and children. So right now we have drop down. Then we have a drop down toggle, which is sitting identical to the drop down. Then below this, we have the icon right here, which Webflow graciously has this arrow drop down icon automatic. So you can delete this and replace it with your own arrow. Then we have the text block, which is drop down. Then below that, we have something called a drop down list, which currently is actually hidden. So if you actually hit the drop down list or anywhere in the actual drop down component, on the right hand side, this is where you can actually edit certain elements based on what you've selected on the screen. So if I head over to settings with drop down list selected, there's actually a setting right here where it says drop down settings. Here we can actually play with a couple of things. One is where it says menu. Currently it's set to hide, so we can actually hit show, and that's what that is. So this is the drop-down list, what you see. By default, it's gray background. And if we expand it, obviously we have drop-down links just below that. And you'll notice that these specific components are already built in Webflow, and you have to kind of style them if you want to change it to look the way that you want it to look. In this specific case, if I go to style, you'll notice that it actually has a padding of 10 pixels top and bottom, and a padding of 20 on the left and right. So don't be fooled, because based on my previous tutorial, as I mentioned, everything in web development technically starts at 0, 0, 0, 0. Sometimes Webflow likes to just put like their own padding into pre-existing components. So just keep that in mind. It can all be overridden. And the next thing is I go back to this drop-down list and back to settings. You'll notice we also have another checkbox that says open menu on hover. So I usually like to tick this. In this case, it makes a lot of sense to tick this. And if I hit this menu back to hide, and I'll go ahead and just preview the site by hitting the preview button on the top left, if I hover my mouse over dropdown, that's what's going to open the link. And you'll notice if I put my mouse just on the left-hand side of this dropdown, it's still opening the dropdown. That's because, again, in this specific dropdown toggle, if I go back to style, you can see it has a padding of 20 all around. So it'll be wise to go ahead and actually add some classes. So in this main one right here where it says dropdown, I'll just give it a class of DD item. So dropdown item. Then below this where it says dropdown toggle, I can give this a class of DD toggle. Then below that, I'm just going to keep the icon and the text block. Then below that in this dropdown list, I'm going to go ahead and just give it a class of DD-list. And that's it. I'm going to go ahead and just rename this to be, let's just say, services in all capitals. And in my specific case, nothing is aligning. So I'm going to go ahead and just check what's going on. In this specific parent container, which is holding all my links, so this about, projects, gallery, and the new services dropdown that we just created, I can see it's set to flex, which is what I want, and it's set into horizontal, which is what I want. But I can see the alignment is currently set to stretch. So I don't want that. I want it to be center. So I can go ahead and just hit this button right here, or I can hit this drop down and hit center. And you'll notice everything is looking a bit more crisp. Right now it has a 36 pixel column. So you'll notice that this specific drop down has a bit more spacing. Again, that's because we have this padding of 20 pixels. So in this specific case, I'm just going to get rid of this. So I'm going to hit 0, 0. And then you'll notice one other thing, that this icon is now like inside services. And why is that? So if we actually go ahead and hit icon right here, we can see that this icon has a position of absolute. Again, I don't really know why. By default, everything's actually set to block. So I'm going to go ahead and just give this a class of DD icon. And I'm just going to change from absolute to static. Now it's just following everything. Right now it's stacked on top of each other because that's how web works. We need to define it. So in the parent container dd-toggle, I'm going to go ahead and just change this display layout to flex. And right now it's set to horizontal, which is exactly what I want. But you'll notice that this arrow is on the left-hand side now. That's simply because it's on top of that specific text. So I've actually just dragged this below that. That is that. And you'll notice that in this DD icon, it also has these crazy styles like 20 padding on the left, on the right. So if I just hit 0, that's cool. And if you really want, you can hit back DD toggle. And what I personally like to do is I like to add gaps. So I'm going to go ahead and add a 1 rem gap. And you'll notice that there's a 1 rem spacing. Of course, there's other ways to do this. You can go ahead and hit this DD icon and give it a margin of 1 rem instead. Again, they both do the exact same thing. But in this case, I'm going to use the gap because I like to use gaps. Cool. As long as you understand that, let's go ahead and make this specific service an actual link. Again, there's no real native way to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a link block. I'm just going to go ahead and type in link block. And I'm adding this inside the dd-toggle class, or this one right here. And in this link block, I'm just going to give everything a name. I'll give it a class of dd link block. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change the position from static to absolute. And if you looked at my previous tutorial, specifically the one in regards to how to build a toggle, what changing the position from static to absolute does is it essentially rips the specific element, this specific div block, out of the document, and it's not following conventional rules, and it's going to just follow the parent, which is set to relative. So what we can do here in this link block is now we can hit this button right here, full, and now it actually put it full, like around the specific drop-down toggle, and that's what we want. We also want to just add a z-index of, let's say, 2, and this is just to make sure that this block is in front of everything. Higher z-index just means it'll be in front. That's all it means. And that's that. So now if I go settings, I can go ahead and just change this link. In this case, I'm just going to add my own website, www.dereksu.com.au. Feel free to check it out. Or you can go ahead and hit pages and select the page you want it to go to. But essentially, that is it. If I preview the site, you'll notice we can go about page, we can go projects, and in services, you can see if I hover my mouse, it's going to show that drop down. Except if I hit services right here, anywhere in this box, and I click on it, it's going to take me to my website because that's the URL that I put. The next thing is to make sure that this is mobile optimized. So let's go ahead and change this in tablet and see what goes on. So right now in this specific navbar, it's built using the Webflow default. So if I hit show right here, you can see we have the services item right here. I kind of just want to put everything to the left. So I'm going to go ahead and just select the parent and just align it to the left. In this specific link right here, DD item, I'm going to go ahead and just give it a width of 100%. You'll notice it has just crazy elements like 329 pixels on the left and right by default. So if I hit 100%, it no longer has that anymore. And let's just say I'll add a bit of padding just to align everything. There is one problem on tablet and on mobile devices. Because you can't hover on like a mobile phone, this isn't really going to work. And this is why it's kind of bad user experience. So what I typically like to do is I like to have the text on the left, the drop down on the right, and then this specific link block, currently it's taking the whole thing. So you can imagine if I'm on mobile and I click onto this, it's just going to take me to my website, which I don't want unless they just click on the text. Rather, I want them to actually hit the drop down. So firstly, let's go ahead and hit this DD toggle, hit settings, we'll hit show, and you can see all the links are stacked below, which is exactly what I want. Sometimes it's set to absolute, so I'm going to go ahead and change this position from absolute to static. That way it doesn't actually sit on top of any other content. And the next thing is with this DD link block, because it's making me click this specific link all the time, I personally like to change the width to something, let's just say 12 rems or even 10 rems. If you want to be precise, you can be precise. Like whatever the text length is, you can add it as the width. So maybe 5, like 5 is actually kind of perfect. So now what's going to happen is if you hit this box right here, which is almost the length, the width of services, it'll take you to the service page, or in my case, my website. And if you hit anywhere outside of this box, it's going to open this drop down. So that's what's happening. I'm going to republish this site, and we can go ahead and check this out on the live site. And you'll notice if I hover my mouse on desktop, no problemo. If I hit this service button, it's going to take me to my website, like so, dereksu.com.au. And if I just hover my mouse, it's going to let me choose these links. But like I said again, if I hit inspect, and I'll just mimic this on an iPad Air, open this menu up on mobile, you'll notice if I hit anywhere in between this box, not the text services, because we set a link block, it's going to open up the drop down, which is what we want. But if we hit services itself, it's going to take me to my website, dereksu.com.au, as you can see right here. So that is that. Again, it's not that great user experience. This is the main problem of why I think Webflow doesn't allow this, is because it gets very, very confusing. You can imagine that specifically on mobile, like it gets really confusing. So there's other ways around it. One suggestion is in this specific website, hbspca.com. You notice that these drop-down links, they're not actually clickable. So I can't actually hit animal shelter, this one right here. It just opens that specific drop-down. But you'll notice below that we have another link that repeats the title, and this takes you to that page. So you could do this instead, but if you really need, like your client's like, I want this drop-down to do this, this is how you do it. Hope you guys found this video super helpful. I know it's quite long. I just really want to break it down. It's actually very, very simple. You just add a link block, set it to absolute, and then in mobile, just fix the width. But sometimes I get comments on like, oh, you know, this is a bit, you know, you didn't explain it quite well. So that's why I went in detail of what's going on. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace be with you.